Imagine this. You're a teenager living with your parents. One night you're in your room. It's dark and quiet. You're almost asleep when you suddenly hear footsteps. Probably my parents, you think. But there seem to be too many, not just one or two sets. And along with the footsteps, you hear men's voices. They're coming up to the second floor. Your room is on the second floor. Suddenly, the footsteps stop abruptly, right outside your door just for a moment. And after that moment, the door is violently thrown open. Several men burst into your room. They grab you, tie your hands, drag you into a van, and then there's nothing but darkness and the unknown. You might think I'm describing a horrific kidnapping and that this story will be about that. But no, this is the story of people who, in this very way, ended up in what might be the most terrifying school in history. The highly impressionable might want to stop watching or stay, but you've been warned. School is meant to prepare a young person for real life. Education, knowledge, discipline, friendships, it's a huge part of our lives. Today's story is the kind you just want to forget. A place of destruction instead of creation. Instead of preparing for life, it destroyed any prospects for it. Today, I tell you the story of the Elan School, a story so dark that researching it was incredibly difficult.
The term troubled teen was popular in the 60s and 70s in the United States. In 1970, in Poland Spring, Maine, psychiatrist Dr. Gerald Davidson and a man named Joe Ricci decided to open a boarding school, naming it the Elan School. Its goal was simple: to help parents deal with difficult children, initially those with substance abuse problems. It was a rehab center where wealthy, often famous parents could send their child hoping for reform. The school's name, Elan, is French for energy and enthusiasm. Joe Ricci promised his school would enthusiastically return troubled teens to a normal life. It quickly rebranded as a universal rehab boarding school for all kinds of troubled teens. The school's website later stated, "Dear parents, we understand how alone and confused you feel. If you are like most of our students' parents, you are faced with a teenager whose behavior is out of control." It sounded hopeful and sales-oriented, especially for a desperate parent. Elan was presented as a specialized boarding school for teens with emotional or behavioral problems, emphasizing life skills, work ethic, responsibility, and honesty. It boasted an active sports program, group sessions, and an 80% college acceptance rate. The annual fee was $44,593.56. It sounded like a dream. But there was one huge problem: its founder, Joe Ricci. Ricci was himself a former troubled teen with a history of substance abuse. At 18, he was arrested and given a choice: prison or a rehab center called Daytop Village. He chose Daytop. This is where Elan's roots lie. Daytop and its inspiration, an organization called Synanon, practiced brutal methods. Synanon was a cult that believed in breaking a person's old personality through pain and humiliation to build a new one. Their primary method was the game, aggressive, hours-long group attack sessions where residents would scream insults to psychologically break each other down. Joe Ricci was deeply impressed by this methodology at Daytop. He claimed it cured him, and teaming up with the Harvard-educated psychiatrist Davidson, he sold the vision of his own school, Elan, treating it first and foremost as a business. Now back to the beginning of this story. That kidnapping was how Elan enrolled students. Once parents paid, a team would arrive, often in the dead of night, to forcibly take the child. This traumatic event was designed to break their will from the start, showing them escape was impossible. One survivor recalled, "I was pinned down by 3 men. What I didn't know then was that these were people from Ilan, and they had told my parents to stay in their room with the door closed. I thought someone had broken in and killed my parents and was now kidnapping me. The average age of students was 13 to 17. The average stay was 2 years, but some were there for 3 or 4.
Upon arrival, the illusion was shattered. Newcomers might see other students in handcuffs or staff screaming in kids' faces. The first step was a shower, where all personal belongings and clothes were taken, beginning the process of dehumanization. Students were issued uniform clothing. Any individuality was stripped. Those who tried to escape were forced to wear a bright yellow t-shirt and pink shorts, both humiliating and making them easy to spot. Humiliation was the foundation of Ilan. Each new student was assigned an older brother or sister from the senior students. But this wasn't a friendly mentor. They were often enemies, tasked with spying and provoking residents into breaking rules to justify punishment. Joe Ricci implemented a strict hierarchy, pitting students against each other. Residents were divided into strong and weak. Newcomers were weak and couldn't even speak to each other. One could rise through the ranks, from worker doing dirty chores to supervisor spying on others, through total obedience. But anyone could be demoted in an instant for the slightest infraction. The rules were countless, contradictory, and absurd. You could be punished for talking too loudly or too quietly, for looking around or at the floor, for smiling without permission, for yawning, for being tired. It was impossible not to break a rule, keeping everyone in a constant state of guilt and fear. The punishments were horrific, inspired by Sananan's game. The most common was the general meeting. At a signal, dozens of students would scream insults for hours at a single victim who stood behind a line on the floor. This verbal onslaught was meant to break them psychologically. Other punishments included haircuts, organized verbal attacks, wearing humiliating signs or costumes like diapers or dog ears, and forced labor like digging ditches only to fill them back in. The worst was the ring. This was an organized boxing match where the offender was forced to fight 10 to 15 other students in succession, beaten until they collapsed, all while staff provided commentary like a sportscaster. The goal was for the victim to never win. Isolation was also used. Students could be forced to stand facing a corner for days, weeks, or even months. Electrical sauce was a vile punishment, where a student was doused in a mixture of garbage, food waste, and even bodily fluids. Contact with the outside world was forbidden and strictly monitored. All phone calls were listened to, and letters home were censored. Students were forced to write glowing reviews of the school to reassure their parents and secure more payments. The system was designed to break students down, making them compliant, while the school profited from their long-term captivity. There were deaths. In 1982, Phil Williams Jr. died after being forced into the ring after complaining of a headache. The school claimed it was an aneurysm. Another girl, Marie Bono, was murdered by a truck driver while trying to escape Ilan in 1993.
For decades, Ilan avoided consequences. Joe Ricci charmed officials and pre-warned inspections. Its downfall began with the internet. Former survivors found each other online and began to share their stories. A pivotal Reddit post in 2010 titled, "I spent years in a concentration camp called Ilan School," went viral, finally drawing mainstream media attention. The truth was out. Parents pulled their children out, new enrollments stopped, and the school's finances collapsed. On April 1st, 2011, the Ilan School closed its doors for good. It was no joke. The factory of cruelty, exposed by the voices of its survivors, was finally shut down.